So today, we're going to talk about a fascinating way to build a truly exceptional workplace culture. And you're not going to believe where it comes from. A 500-year-old practice that, it turns out, has some pretty profound things to say about our modern world. All right, let's get into it.
But first, let's just start with a feeling that I'm pretty sure every single leader has had. You know, you put in all this effort, you write the fancy mission statement, you talk about the values on the wall, but creating a real, lasting culture of excellence, it feels, well, kind of impossible. So, why is that? And here's the thing, most culture building is all top-down. It's about rules and inspections and constantly correcting people. But you just can't force someone to care. You can't police them into being excellent. The real stuff, the culture that actually sticks, has to start with the individual. It's got to be built from the inside out. And that brings us to this really interesting solution. It's both incredibly simple and has been tested for centuries. It's called the Jesuit Examen. Now look, let's just set aside the name for a second. Don't think of it as a religious thing. Think of it as a piece of profound human technology, a framework for intentional self-reflection that can totally reshape how a team works.
Okay, so where do we even begin? It all starts with self-awareness. I mean, you can't change what you don't even notice, right? This is the inner game, and it is the foundation for absolutely everything else.
And here we see this incredible one-to-one translation. The original idea was about spiritual growth, sure, but the workplace application is just so powerful. It basically says that most of our performance issues, they're not skill problems. They're awareness problems. We get stuck in these patterns we can't even see.
So, how do you build that awareness? Well, instead of a manager pointing out your flaws, the individual learns to ask themselves these simple but really powerful questions. When you can name your own pattern, like, oh, I notice my tone gets sharp when I'm under pressure, then you suddenly have the power to change it. Now that is real maturity.
And to help name these patterns, the Examen gives us two core concepts. Just think of them as two different operating states you can be in. There's consolation, which is when you're feeling that peace, that clarity, and then there's desolation, when you're being driven by agitation and anxiety and all that negative stuff. It's basically a language for your inner world.
And this isn't some abstract, fluffy idea. When you're operating from that state of peace, that consolation, it produces real, tangible, high-value results. It's things like finishing a job all the way through, communicating clearly with a customer, and just taking pride in your work. It's that feeling of a job well done.
But on the flip side, operating from agitation, from desolation, that's where value gets destroyed. This is where the rushing happens. This is where corners get cut and blame gets passed around. An employee in this state isn't just unhappy, they're making worse decisions and probably damaging your customer relationships.
So, once you have this self-awareness, the next step is actually using it. This is where you can start to rewire your entire team's perspective on the workday and all of its challenges.
A huge part of this is gratitude. You know, in tough, repetitive jobs, it is so easy to just drift into cynicism. But if you actively look for things to be grateful for, a happy customer, a problem you solved, it literally interrupts that negative drift. It builds the resilience that helps prevent burnout.
And this right here is a crucial distinction. This whole process is not about beating yourself up. Shame just creates a toxic culture of defensiveness and hiding mistakes. But healthy, honest reflection, that creates ownership, growth, and trust. I mean, can you imagine a team where people can admit a mistake without any drama? That's a total game changer.
And the final piece of this mindset shift is about making small, specific resolutions. You know, these vague goals like, I need to be better, are basically useless. But a concrete commitment like, okay, tomorrow I'm just going to pause and slow down for 2 seconds before I walk in the door. That's something you can actually do. Excellence is built from these tiny, consistent adjustments.
Okay, so when individuals on the team start making these internal shifts, something pretty amazing starts to happen. It actually begins to transform the entire team's sense of purpose, and even the language they use with each other.
Now this is a profound reframing. Are you just performing labor, or are you fulfilling a vocation? Changing how you describe your work, from just a simple task to a meaningful service, it completely changes the level of care and responsibility someone brings to the job, and a manager never even has to say a word.
And pretty soon, the whole team develops this new, shared language. People can actually articulate what's going on inside and take ownership. When you hear your team members saying things like, yeah, I need to own that, or I was just operating from pressure, you know you're building something really special. This shared language creates shared standards, and that is the absolute bedrock of a strong culture.
So what's the long-term strategic payoff for doing all this inner work? Well, it's about building a culture that can actually scale, because it starts to run on its own. And this slide really shows the ultimate shift. You move from being a manager who's constantly policing everything to leading a team of professionals who regulate themselves. They start to spot and fix issues before they ever even get to you. And that's not just a better culture, that's a massive strategic advantage.
Now, here's the most remarkable part of all of this. It all starts with this tiny little commitment, just 5 minutes a day of intentional reflection. I mean, on its own, that seems like nothing, right?
But that small daily practice, it compounds. Over a single year, it adds up to 30 hours of focused, intentional self-improvement for every single person on your team. And then you look out 5 years and suddenly that's 150 hours. Just imagine the caliber of person and the caliber of team you can create with that level of consistent, dedicated investment in personal growth.
The goal becomes so much bigger. It's not just about improving how people do their jobs. As the source material puts it so perfectly, you're forming men and women. You're actually creating an environment where people can grow as human beings.
So when this practice is truly embedded in a company, all the things you were trying to force into existence before, they just start to happen naturally. Customer service gets better on its own, the blame culture shrinks, pride in the work goes way up, and you attract and keep a higher level of talent because you've created a place where people can genuinely flourish.
And so we'll leave you with the very first question from this entire process. I want you to take a moment and honestly ask yourself this. What happens to you when you feel rushed? Your answer, well, that's the first step on this whole path.